Although CHOGM has officially ended, debate continues over the decision not to take immediate action against Zimbabwe. Nigel Blunden reports on the aftermath of the conference.
Members of Robert Mugabe's regime saw the decision not to immediately impose sanctions as a victory.
We are very pleased that the intentions of Britain and Australia were defeated.
As John Howard was officially closing the first meeting of Commonwealth leaders in the 21st century,
I declare the meeting closed.
Some observers believed the stance on Zimbabwe was too soft, but the Prime Minister was receiving strong support from our oldest ally.
I don't think there can be any criticism of him as a chairman. Indeed, I think he got the best deal that he could have got in the circumstances.
The outcome that has been achieved in relation to Zimbabwe represents the consensus of the meeting. There clearly wasn't majority support for suspension before the election.
Commonwealth nations next meet en masse in Nigeria late next year. And before leaving Coolum, the Prime Minister rejected suggestions the row here over Zimbabwe was one based on racism that's left any permanent wounds.
Well, I don't think there are any lasting repercussions.
Nigel Blunden reporting for Nightline.
The Governor-General, Peter Hollingworth, has quit tonight as #1 ticket holder of AFL Premiers, the Brisbane Lions, sparing the club from being caught in the row over his vice-regal future. Dr Hollingworth's patronage of a number of organisations has been terminated or reconsidered. In the aftermath of allegations, he tried to cover up child sex abuse while he was the Anglican Archbishop of Brisbane. Tonight, the Brisbane Lions said Dr Hollingworth's decision to step down is not related to that controversy. The meeting was told Dr Hollingworth, who's held the top ticket for the past decade, wanted to relinquish the position in the middle of last year because of the difficulties of travelling from Canberra. Winter Olympic star Elisa Camplin arrived home in Melbourne today with the ultimate souvenir from Salt Lake City. She says the gold medal hasn't left her side since the presentation ceremony.
Flowers from a sponsor's ram and a welcome home kiss from mum and sister. All this newfound celebrity status has left Elisa a little bewildered.
Like I said, I still feel like a normal person.
But there's been nothing normal about Elisa's life since winning Australia's second Winter Olympic gold medal and becoming a national hero. The 27-year-old self-effacing manner has won plenty of admirers, both here and in America.
I just feel like a normal girl that did my job on the day. Like I prepared for it with every little inch that we could, and it worked out, but I don't feel any different.
Except, concerned about security, Elisa has slept with the medal under her pillow every night.
Yeah, I didn't know what else to do with it.
But Elisa has no problem sharing the wonderment of the medal.
You should all feel it. It's really heavy.
That generosity of spirit, as good as gold. Ken Sutcliffe for Nightline.
In finance news, a strong lead from Wall Street saw the Australian share market close higher today. The All Ordinaries was up 12 points. Media stocks were among the winners. News Corp up 51 cents, PBL up 26, Fairfax rose 20 cents. Resources also gained, BHP Billiton up 24 cents, and Rio Tinto jumped more than $1. Speculation of a rise in interest rates, though, saw banking stocks hit hard. Westpac losing 27 cents. That's more than 1.6%. The ANZ fell 23 cents. The Commonwealth was off 45. Overseas in Tokyo, the Nikkei closed down 101 points. In London tonight, the FTSE is trading 3 points up. Gold is fetching $297.45 US an ounce. And the Australian dollar tonight buying 51.97 US cents, 59 euro cents, 68 yen, and just a shade over 36.5 pence. Ahead on Nightline, a life or death warning about the dangers of ignoring asthma. And the Middle East racked by a worsening spiral of bloodshed. In the Middle East, Israelis and Palestinians continue to trade blood for blood. In the latest incidents, a Palestinian gunman has killed 3 Israelis in a Tel Aviv restaurant, and a Palestinian suicide bomber has killed himself and an Israeli passenger on a bus near the northern town of Afula. Meanwhile, an extreme right-wing Israeli group has claimed responsibility for a bomb blast at an Arab school. In all, 59 people have been killed in just 4 days.
Israeli F-16 struck in Bethlehem, demolishing a Palestinian security headquarters, sending hundreds of terrified Palestinians into the streets. The army also hit refugee camps today. But the worst attack came in the Palestinian town of Ramallah. The wife of a Palestinian activist had been taking her 3 children home from school. Israeli tank fire killed them all. The army said it had been aiming at a group of Palestinian policemen. There has never been any evidence to support Israel's claim that attacks like this one deter Palestinian violence. Now more than ever, Palestinians say they will never be deterred, and Israelis should prepare themselves to pay an even higher price. That follows one of Israel's worst weekends since his conflict began. 21 Israelis dead in less than 24 hours. Palestinian groups have been hitting on all fronts: suicide attacks against civilians, shooting attacks against Israeli settlers and soldiers. One Palestinian sharpshooter managed to kill 10 Israelis, including 7 soldiers, at this checkpoint, and then he got away. Today, Israelis were still reeling, and Palestinian militant groups were sounding triumphant. These gunmen, members of the Al-Aqsa brigades, told us Palestinians now come to them begging to be suicide bombers. The Israelis blow us up, this man said. Why shouldn't I go to Israel and blow myself up and take some of them with me? The Al-Aqsa brigades claim they now have 10 suicide bombers ready to go. They've promised that this week will be, in their words, a week of darkness.
Back home, asthma is increasingly a killer in Australia, and it turns out one of the biggest contributing factors is asthmatics themselves. Complacency is the problem. Medical authorities releasing a new set of guidelines to encourage asthmatics to stick with their treatment.
Asthma now affects 2 million Australians. One of them is the new Federal Health Minister, Kay Patterson. Launching the guidelines today, she expressed concern that the asthma death rate has increased for the first time in a decade.
It can take the life of very young people, and I think people need to realise that it's a very serious disease, but it can be managed and we can reduce the mortality if it's managed properly.
But a news poll shows a dangerous complacent trend emerging. Half the people with asthma don't take their medication properly, and 20% who describe their asthma as moderate have actually been admitted to hospital for emergency treatment in the last year. Peter Lewis has spent most of his life on the sideline, unable to participate in everyday activities because of poorly managed asthma.
My mother believed in old-fashioned treatments and such. I would get asthma attacks regularly every weekend.
Now improving with new medications under the supervision of a GP, Peter thought chronic colds and shortness of breath were normal.
It does on a fairly slow or quick downhill to a shorter life.
It's not like an illness that you're going to get over and go past. It will be with you for all of your life. And the risk is, without sticking to treatment plan, people run the risk of dying from asthma.
The guidelines are also for medical students, doctors and pharmacists. Cheryl Taylor for Nightline.
After the break, the Australian Test team refocuses after the one-day upheaval. And Kathy Freeman heads back to international competition. To sport now on Nightline, and Kathy Freeman returns to international competition this week, running in Thursday's track classic at Melbourne's Olympic Park. And the Olympic champion says she is almost back to her best.
By her own admission, Kathy Freeman is feeling like a kid again.
Feel free to scream.
And it was certainly child's play at Luna Park today, where our track and field elite assembled to push Thursday night's big meet at Olympic Park. While the Serpent gave Kathy a taste of speed, the sprint queen is warning we won't be seeing her at her quickest when she competes in the 200 metres.
I wouldn't mind winning, but realistically I don't think I will. But I'm going to try my hardest.
After coming down from the hype that was Sydney 2000, Kathy ballooned to 65 kilos. Now tipping the scales at 54, she's just 2 kilos from her target weight, perfectly poised to make her way back to the top.
I get up and I'm enthusiastic to do sit-ups and push-ups, and I'm eating reasonably well.
In all, 15 countries will be represented on Thursday night. The Kenyans are out in force with an eye on the distance events, but keen to keep them at bay, Geelong runner Craig Mottram in the 5K.
Obviously with the Kenyans out here, it does motivate Australian athletes to perform better, and they're great athletes, so it does push us to a new level.
And all eyes will again be on Tamsin Lewis, now under the guidance of Olympic heroes Daley Thompson and Sebastian Coe. Tamsin will tackle the 800 metres, where she's yet to break the record set by Charlene Rendina back in 1976. Tony Jones for Nightline.
In Rugby League, the Northern Eagles have stolen a march on the rest of the Premiership clubs, naming its squad for the opening round. Former Sharks Nathan Long and Jason Ferris have been included for the clash with Newcastle.
A fresh start could well be the motto for the Eagles this year. After a disruptive 2001, the doomed joint venture with North Sydney has been scrapped, creating a state of harmony in the club that is clearly felt by the players.
The club all heading in one direction is a good thing, and I think that's going to help us on the field.
New captain Menzies leads a team with the greatest turnover of players in the NRL. 20 have left and Jeff Tooby has retired. So far, the squad has gelled nicely. Last weekend's victory over the Roosters cause for optimism.
The club's obviously going through a rebuilding stage, but in saying that, we expect to do very well this year and everything's going good so far.
The club is also attempting to lift its game off the field. Today, the Eagles hosted a forum aimed at attracting women back to rugby league. It was a lively debate and many issues were discussed.
What colour is the jumper this year?
But more seriously, it tackled the problems that are turning women away from the game.
Every other day you pick up the paper and someone's been in a fight at a pub, or, so there's been a drug scandal, or someone's biffing somebody else.
It's about, creating the right role models, and it has got great role models, and we need to bring women back to the sport.
And that gets the nod of approval from the players.
Quite a lot of good ideas being thrown around, as I said, which can only benefit the club.
Chris Hodgkinson for Nightline.
After a week of being reminded of their cricketing mortality, Australia's test side will try to put that behind them as they prepare to tackle South Africa in the second test. The challenge for the home side, though, is far greater as they try to come back from their most humiliating defeat ever.
Fallout from the one-day squad had little impact on the test team. Despite his axing, few ill effects from Mark Waugh at training. With the second test still 3 days away, one local fan was entertained by Adam Gilchrist. The vice-captain of both squads convinced the tourists are now concentrating on test cricket.
Leading now into the test match, I think, like we showed in the first test, we'll be able to put all that behind us and just focus on the main issues here, and that's test cricket.
With both Waugh twins now solely test cricketers, the new one-day boss agrees.
We've just got to get on with things and hopefully play the same brand of cricket with those guys not in the side.
Unlike the one-day squad, Australia's test team is bound to remain unchanged for Friday's match in Cape Town. However, the South Africans have made 4 changes to their lineup. Ruled out with injury for the first test, captain Sean Pollock returns, replacing Alan Donald, who broke down and retired in Johannesburg. Paceman Devault Pretorius earns a call-up, spinner Paul Adams a recall. Also making a comeback, Daryl Cullinan, a batsman tagged as a Shane Warne bunny. In South Africa, Andrew McKinlay for Nightline.
Next, tomorrow's weather details, the latest on tonight's top stories, and the battle to save the suits that rode with the Rockets. Now let's go into space on Nightline. Today, astronauts from the shuttle Columbia began working on the Hubble telescope, roped in yesterday by the shuttle's robotic arm. 2 crew members have now begun the task of installing new solar panels on the Hubble. It'll take 4 more spacewalks to complete the mission. And when they've finished, what happens to their spacesuits? Ever thought of that? Well, one woman has. Ned Potter reports.
When he left for the launch pad that morning, John Glenn looked like a modern knight in shining armor.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
But today, the inner layers of his silver suit are so brittle that if he tried to put it on, it would crack.
Oh, you're such a beautiful suit. You really are.
Glenn's suit is on public display, but so many others are falling apart that Amanda Young has been given the full-time job of trying to save them.
You want to look after them and make sure that they're here for somebody, your grandson's children.
It's turned out the modern materials from which the suits were made decay much more quickly than natural ones.
Right here.
So at a crowded old lab in Maryland, Young and 2 colleagues keep watch over 150 spacesuits.
Yeah.
Photographing them, diagnosing their problems.
The L is 75.18.
After you.
Okay. And storing them in special climate-controlled chambers.
Looks like a morgue.
They lie on racks covered with linen shrouds. 7 of the most precious have been to the moon.
This is Alan Shepard's Apollo 14 suit.
I'm going to try a little sand trap shot here.
This is John Young's Apollo 16.
Come on out here and give me a salute.
This is Jack Schmidt's Apollo 17 suit.
Dadgummit. Jack Schmidt having a few problems.
It's filthy,
Yes.
but it's filthy with...
Lunar dust.
When you think about it, these suits could be some of the most famous outfits in history. They could survive the extremes of space, but not the ravages of time on Earth. This boot used to be airtight. This glove used to be flexible.
We have a lot of problems with the rubber breaking down, getting very hard and brittle, and then actually physically breaking when people move the suit around.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Until someone figures out how to stop time, these symbols of the space age are best kept here.
Come on, boys, go back to bed.
And so to the national weather. Troughs are influencing northern and central Australia. A low is edging down the Queensland coast while a high is approaching the southwest. The forecasts: afternoon storms in Darwin, mostly fine in Brisbane, morning showers in Sydney, mostly fine in Canberra, and fine in Melbourne, Hobart, Adelaide and Perth. Now an update on our main stories tonight. And the ACTU is considering a class action against Tesna bosses Solomon Lew and Lindsay Fox over the failed Ansett revival bid. Creditors of the airline are looking at a negligible return on the money they're owed. 600,000 commuters in Sydney and Newcastle face chaos over the next 2 days as government bus drivers go on a 48-hour strike. Train services are expected to come under strain, while extra lanes are being opened up to help relieve traffic on the roads. And in the Middle East, thousands of Palestinians have marched at the funeral of 6 civilians killed by Israeli tank shells in Ramallah. The wife and 3 children of a Hamas leader were among the dead. Palestinian militants were quick to respond, a gunman killing 3 Israelis in a Tel Aviv restaurant, and a suicide bomber has blown himself up on a bus, killing another Israeli. And a late note: South African batsman Daryl Cullinan has just announced he is pulling out of the second test against Australia, he says because of contractual problems. That delays the much anticipated revival of his duel with spinner Shane Warne. And that was the day. I'm Hugh Rimmington from all of us here at Nightline. Good night.
This program brought to you by Holden Rodeo. For all your dirty work.